We do. Are trade unions the true vanguard of the struggles of working people for better working and living conditions? Why do trade unions in Africa and elsewhere celebrate May Day, and how does that impact on the daily struggles of workers? Pan-African Television and People's Dispatch went out to find answers to these questions and the impact of neoliberal policies on the working people of Africa. We spoke to trade union leaders and workers in several African countries, and we present to you the voices of African trade unions.
TUC was established in 1945. It's more than 70 years ago, and you may know that TUC was very much part of the struggle for independence for this country, and many people still remember the role the TUC played. So since the 1957, when Ghana achieved independence, we have always celebrated May Day. May Day is important because it's our International Workers' Day. This is a day that Kenyan workers join millions of workers out there in the world to celebrate what happened many years ago in the US. And significantly, one of the things that we always remember about May Day was the fight for 8-hour work. Before the whole world started working 8 hours, 7 hours, and so on, people could work for 12 hours, 14 hours. But it was the struggle for 8 hours that led to the sad killing of a number of trade union leaders, which led to the declaration of May 1 as May Day, which has become International Day of Solidarity. So for us in the TUC and organized labor generally, we celebrate this day first to mark the freedom that we achieved as workers of the world, and also to solidarize with the rest of the world. And for us in Ghana, it affords us a very unique opportunity to bring the president himself to our parade. And this year we are going to Bolga, Upper East region. And in addition to getting the president and his vice, so we can let them know exactly what is going wrong and what is going right, we also want to show solidarity with the people in Upper East region, especially Boku, where a conflict has been going on for a long time. And we are providing the very, very unique opportunity for the president of Ghana to make a statement directly to the chiefs and people of Upper East. So for us, that's a very, very important and very unique, opportunity for the president and for us to show solidarity. So yes, we show solidarity with the whole world. We actually have sent 23 of our members and leaders to Cuba as I speak to you. They arrived yesterday. They will be there for about 10 days to celebrate the May Day with our brothers and sisters in Cuba, and also call for the lifting of the blockade, which doesn't make sense at all. For over 60 years, America has squeezed this small country to death. Our brothers and sisters in Cuba are very strong. Otherwise, that country will have collapsed. So we go there to show solidarity. So we don't show solidarity only here making statements. We show solidarity by joining our friends in Cuba to let them know.
Well, I guess May Day for us, and I guess today for workers all over the world, is a very important, unique day for us in South Africa, but I guess the working class all over the world since 2008. Deep global crisis of capitalism, we have been going under very severe challenges, and to be blunt, I think that workers of the world and the South African working class have been under siege from neoliberal policies that have been adopted since 1996 in our country. And these neoliberal policies all over the world have captured the state And for us in South Africa, it has been a painful one, where when we would have expected a democratic breakthrough that would have, as for expectation, that would have liberated the working class, deliver worker rights, which are human rights, we received the worst. In fact, the working class has all its hard-won gains have been under siege, they have been under attack, and we have been resisting for years. And from where things are, we are in a situation where the working class today in South Africa, at the back of COVID-19 and all the social ills of capitalism, imperialism, have been very rough and thorough to the working class. And of course, in our country, what we are basically must recover from is the fact that our revolution went wrong, in that at a point of victory, when we're supposed to have driven a revolutionary agenda, we have an unfortunate situation where instead of securing political, in fact, to be blunt, we secured political power without economic power.
May Day is a very important day for the working people of this country and the world all over, particularly for the General Agricultural Workers Union. It's a day that signifies the birth and of our rights. You know, most significant of it is about the 8-hour working day that we have in this country. But for the May Day, which actually commenced in 1886, where some people had to lose their lives fighting for the 8-hour in Chicago, we would not have had it. And since then, we'll be celebrating it, and we are happy, we are proud that we have won that day. And for us, we will always remember it to pay tribute to our forefathers who laid their lives for what we are benefiting today, and to remind ourselves that the struggle continues and that there are still challenges of our times which we need to pick up and lay also our lives down for the generations to come. So May Day is very important for us because of two reasons: to remind capital and governments that they have a responsibility, to also remind ourselves that nothing good will come to us until we fight and struggle to maintain the right things for working people of the country.
O meu nome é João Correia, sou presidente do Sindicato Nacional dos Enfermeiros Sem Comissão e Afins e também sou secretário nacional de Assuntos da Juventude e de quadros da ONTG Central Sindical do meu país, que é a Guiné-Bissau. Para nós, 1 de maio significa uma data de reflexão, quer no sentido negativo, quer no sentido positivo. No sentido positivo porque houve uma luta ano passado, onde surgiu grandes ganhos para os trabalhadores, em relação à redução de horas de trabalho e melhoria de condições de trabalho. Mas também, por outro lado, ainda hoje, nota-se que temos muitas coisas que devemos fazer, existem muitas dificuldades em relação aos trabalhadores. E então a reflexão vem nesse sentido de poder trabalhar hoje para poder melhorar as condições de trabalho dos trabalhadores de todo o mundo e em particular da África e do meu país. Mas também nós, a nossa organização é uma organização muito antiga, fundada em 1961, que desempenhou sempre um papel independentemente de defender os trabalhadores, mas também defender a luta, ou seja, a libertação do nosso país. Mas não só isso, também tentou trabalhar sempre em defesa da democracia e da liberdade de expressão. Como podem notar, por exemplo, 2 anos atrás, o governo do meu país adotou certas medidas em relação a novos impostos que veio, ou seja, que acaratou diretamente a vida dos trabalhadores. Mas não só também adotou isso, o governo do meu país cortou os benefícios em termos de junta médica e assistência medicamentosa em relação aos trabalhadores, e nisso acarretou graves custos. E também na área social, por exemplo, educação e saúde, disseram que querem atingir, ou seja, cumprir com as metas ditas pela FMI ou pelo FMI, então decidiram cortar novas admissões nas áreas de educação e de saúde. Mas não só, retiraram mais de 1000 profissionais na área de saúde. E todas essas medidas e políticas de bloqueio do salário acabaram indiretamente ou diretamente por afetar o processo de sindicalização no meu país. Os profissionais passam a ter medo de aderir às lutas sindicais, em termos de greve, em termos de marcha, mas também a ameaça aos próprios líderes sindicais acaba por amedrontar as pessoas a fazerem parte da direção sindical. Mas em relação ao nosso programa, ou seja, projetos a médio prazo, longo prazo e curto prazo, temos como principal missão a revitalização do sindical. E isso passa necessariamente pela capacitação dos associados e passa necessariamente pela reestruturação das nossas estruturas e tentar abrir leques de atuação, manter muito mais relações fortes com outras organizações para podermos atingir em conjunto os objetivos pretendidos. E não só lutar pelos direitos dos trabalhadores, mas também lutar pelos direitos civis e do interesse nacional e da África em geral e da humanidade no seu global em termos da justiça social. Nós temos algumas campanhas programadas, por exemplo, em termos da divulgação do Código do Trabalho, que é o novo código que existe no nosso país, e de outras leis que existem no nosso país, mobilização da massa dos trabalhadores, mas também poder criar condições para capacitar, para interferir nas outras organizações que têm outro fim diferente, mas que, ao fim e ao cabo, queremos atingir o mesmo objetivo. E, por último, nós, enquanto o NTG, apelamos à união entre os trabalhadores. Não só a união, mas a solidariedade entre os trabalhadores é importante, porque, ao fim e ao cabo, nós é que trabalhamos para produzir riqueza. Não só em defesa dos nossos interesses ou direitos enquanto trabalhadores, mas também poder unir para a defesa nacional e para a defesa da África em geral.
Well, firstly, as workers all over the world are aware, it's an international solidarity day for workers. And it was brought about as a result of poor working conditions that existed many years ago. In fact, in the 19th century, conditions of service were very, very poor. Long hours of work, poor working conditions in terms of salary, pay, remuneration, and all of that. And so there was a need to come together as workers to resist big business or capital. In the course of that altercation, many workers lost their lives. Others got in prison. And some were even, sentenced to death. And so in today's 21st century, workers are still going through the same problems. In fact, the injustices of yesterday, still remain the same injustices today. And so workers in Ghana, workers in the mining sector, are bedeviled with similar challenges of long hours of work, poor working conditions, poor remuneration, matters around pensions. You see workers agitating about their pensions and the fact that their incomes and their pensions ought to be protected and all that. So the circumstances under which the Industrial Revolution days, which culminated into the May Day or First May, aren't different today. In fact, they are about the same. And so when we celebrate or when we commemorate May Day as workers, that matter workers in the mining industry, it brings to fore many of the things that we went through many years ago and we are going through up until today. And so as workers, it affords us an opportunity, to look back and ask ourselves whether we have made any significant progress at all. Are working conditions better relative to the Industrial Revolution days? or they have worsened. And in fact, I must say that the Ghanaian worker, the Ghanaian mine worker, has made some strides. There's been some considerable progress over the period. And so celebrating May Day remains very significant to the working people of this country, and for that matter, workers within the mining sector.
For us in Ghana, it has been very historical in the sense that we've been part of the movement that fought for independence of this country. You know, as far back in the 1920s, working people of this country started to mobilize themselves to agitate and resist some of the oppressive and exploitative, policies of the colonial institutions and their employers. We ended up ensuring that, we had the right to organize. It was through that pressure that indeed made the colonial government, to come up with a Cap 91, that is the trade union ordinance, which permitted trade unions in the 1940 to have the right to organize. And since then, we have not relented. In fact, by 1945, when the TUC was formed, it was a great landmark, which actually catapulted us into a new momentum of struggle, which we partnered the liberation movement, to gain independence for this country. We have been proud for our role to gain political independence for this country. We are also proud that since independence, that's 1957, we have become a pivotal, actor in the determination of issues within the country. We have played a role to ensure that the CPP government policy, which was meant to industrialize this country, went on successfully. Nevertheless, we had very many instances where governments and capital came after us, and we will never forget about the day in 1966 when the trade union leaders were rounded up and then arrested, detained, and then reversed the clock of our progress until we restored ourselves. We will not also forget about the day that this hall, the hall in which we are sitting today, in 1971, the TUC was disbanded. It was disbanded by the UP government, that's the Bouzier's government, through an act, that is Act 383, on 24th September 1971. Unfortunately, 4 months later, that was 13th January 1972, there was a coup d'etat. And through a decree, Decree 22, the Act 383 was repealed. Much as the leadership at then had reported Ghana government to the ILO, and investigations were on the way, the TUC was restored. So these are historic moments, and will also be part of the struggle since then, after the military rule, to return this country back to democratic dispensation. So we are proud that we played all this role. Economically, we have also set up institutions, like the LET, that's the Labour Enterprises Trust, try to contribute our quota to salvage this country from its economic downturn. So we've set up some businesses under the Labour Enterprises Trust, but then of course it has not done so well as we expected. Nevertheless, this you can see that we've been a very critical developmental partner of this country.
Well, in terms of neoliberal policies, I must say that the current structure of Ghana's economy in the South. It's an imposition arising out of, the neoliberal economic policies of the global North. Raw material exploitation without industrialization, which has lasted for many, many years, and it doesn't appear it's going to go away anytime soon. It's clearly an imposition of the global North, and that is a neoliberal policy of Ghana, and for that matter, the rest of the African continent. And so as long as we remain under this rather draconian economic structure, it's obvious that we're not going to go anywhere in terms of our growth, in terms of our development. And so we are going to be running back to the global North, to the IMF, to the Bretton Woods institution, the World Bank, capping out, begging for arms and begging for support. And so it's only important that we reset our economic models, not just in Ghana, but across the entire African continent. And that's the only way we can break through. Anything short of that is going to leave us in perpetual poverty and servitude. Beyond that, or even at a micro level, I think that look, foreign direct investment comes with its own, terms and conditions. And so, for example, if you look at the structural adjustment program in the 1980s, when you had a switch from the stable mining corporations to the domination of foreign interest in Ghana's mining sector, I mean, it led to lots and lots of job cuts, redundancies virtually everywhere. And so many people lost their jobs till date. Labor numbers in the mining sector and by extension the rest of the Ghanaian economy has shrunk, largely due to foreign direct investment, and most often than not the terms and conditions that they come with. And so these are neoliberal economic policies that are impinging against employment matters, not just in the mining sector, but across the Ghanaian economy. And in fact, by extension, the African continent. Because at the end of the day, once the investor comes in with his own interest, and that interest is solely to raise the bottom line, increase profit margins, and return a much greater interest to the shareholder. The imposition and for them, the restrictions on employment, restrictions on, pensions and all of that are part of the consequences or the effects of the neoliberal policies on the Ghanaian economy. We all also do know that when it comes to the public sector, one of the preconditions for the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, is that look, anytime you have to get some aid or some support of a kind, they tell you there must be freeze on public hiring. So public sector employment continues to shrink. Well, that's a precondition. Unfortunately, because we are so anxious to go for loans rather than be more indigenous about how we raise organic revenue and all of that, we run after these loans and we have no option but to comply with most of these directives from the Bretton Woods institutions, who are actually the drivers of neoliberal economic policy.
Boa tarde. Estou aqui em representação do meu país, Guiné-Bissau. A minha organização, o UNCG, União Nacional de Trabalhadores da Guiné-Bissau. O 1º de maio para nós significa para nós o 1º de maio significa luta para a defesa dos trabalhadores. Por isso, para nós é um dia que serve para a reflexão dos trabalhadores do mundo inteiro, em particular da Guiné-Bissau. Porque sabemos que a luta dos trabalhadores não começou hoje. Começou desde muitos anos, em 1886, quando os trabalhadores estão a reclamar abaixo do horário. Portanto, para nós, o 1º de maio deve servir-nos para reflexão. Pensar como passamos ontem e onde estamos e como traçar como traçar estratégia para chegar em frente. Por isso, nós em Guiné-Bissau, a nossa organização tem estado a sofrer muitas retaliações. A sofrer muitas retaliações por causa da nossa luta. Então, retaliações essas, aumento brutal de impostos, bloqueio de salários dos funcionários e até bloqueio de subvenção que a nossa organização tem direito. Por isso, neste momento, estamos a trabalhar com dificuldades. Muitos trabalhadores estão com medo de aderir à luta por causa da retaliação. Então, o nosso plano hoje é para mobilizar fundos para a formação dos jovens, e também mobilizar os trabalhadores para aderirem à luta. Porque a nossa luta, a luta dos trabalhadores, tem um fim justo. Portanto, é isso.
Well, as I said, we have a painful history right back from the Union of 1910, where both English and Afrikaner capital in the South African situation, there was a resolve, and that union was about making sure that black people, Africans in particular, should not form part of ownership and control of in the South African economy, and that theirs was to be oppressed and to be super exploited as an accumulation strategy for capital, which is owned and controlled by white monopoly capital in our country, which has been very racist. The South African white monopoly capital basically made money, has accumulated and maximized profit, and they benefited. They were led. Their interests were defended and advanced by the racist apartheid regime. At the point of victory, they were very smart. When P.W. Botha in 1985 was supposed to have basically dropped racism and give the people of South Africa what they deserve, give our people the land which was taken by a barrel of a gun, ensure that we form part of ownership and control of the economy to undo the accumulation strategy. As you would know, that what we have not won in the base, which is the economy, you can't win it in superstructure, which is politics. But De Beers and all of them were very smart. They negotiated with the ANC to secure a negotiated settlement, and that negotiated settlement hold back the wheels of history of the liberation struggle, and it postponed the freedom for our people and the South African working class. As such, because we were given a hollow political power without economic power, our people in this country, the South African working class, remain victims, and as such we remain landless, economically marginalized and dispossessed.
I mean, from the 80s, this country has gone through 17 International Monetary Fund programs. And I'm sure you understand, when they say IMF is in your country, it's a terrible experience any country shouldn't have. Because you sell your sovereignty to them. Yeah? They make sure the government will not even talk to the people. They only talk to them. Because they are bringing some small amount of money. So the 80s, the structural adjustment programs, the economic recovery programs, and all that were managed by IMF. Of course, you go with your policies, and then they say, we approve or we disapprove. Then they push you to accept what they think is good for your country. They already designed answers even before the questions are asked. So they bring this here, they give you that small amount of money, and then you are asked to do so many things. In the 80s and 90s, they sacked tens of thousands of workers because that's what IMF has government to do. And many people had their lives, truncated because of that. And for us in the union, that is one thing we'll never forget, that we lost tens of thousands of our members to IMF programs. Today, as I speak to you, government has banned the employment of young people into the public service. Why? Because they are preparing to go to IMF. And so these neoliberal policies that the international financial institutions are promoting worldwide is something that, as people who are taking care of workers, we always suffer because our workers and our members.
It's painful that the entire continent, the African continent, our the continent which we belong in, is a victim of structural adjustment program. Whilst we must continue to appreciate as the South African working class that we were liberated at the back of international solidarity, which started here at home. South Africa would not be liberated if it was not the solidarity struggle that the people of Zimbabwe and the rest of the African continent, Angola, the Battle of Quito Carnival with Cuba, which took back home dead bodies as a sign of solidarity. The same Cuba, which as we speak today, is a victim of trade blockade by imperialists led by the empire, the United States of America. Our struggle has been intertwined with the people of the world. But having secured that victory, having to learn that they gave us that solidarity whilst they were struggling against the structural adjustment program. It is not a fashion that as we speak today, it's not a small matter that today as we speak, Africa is at the bottom and its people at the bottom of the food chain. But strangely, when we should have been wiser as the South African Liberation Forces, we basically impose on us self-imposed structural adjustment program when the ANC in 1996 adopted a neoliberal agenda, adopted a Washington consensus in the form of GIA, and I will continue to respect Nelson Mandela as our hero. But I remember him very well when he came back from a trip all over Europe, and he said in a very authoritarian voice, loved by all of us, that GIA is the policy of the ANC. And it was a very nice acronym. It's about growth, employment, and redistribution. You could not fault how it was being packaged, but the devil was in the detail. It was about liberalizing trade, which meant that instead of championing localization and create the most needed job, we allowed dumping of production from other parts of the world, because instead of seeing ourselves as a developing country, strangely, South Africa was being positioned as a developed country when it was not the case. Secondly, GIA removed exchange control, basically allowing money, both legally and illegal, to leave the country into various stock exchange all over the world, into capital flights. This is money that we needed to be invested in productive sectors of the economy. We had to resist against privatization which accompanied GIA, and I think very few companies that we succeeded as the labor movement to defend, such as ESCOM. But even those companies, they were forced, they were pushed to basically accept that they must focus on pursuing profitability, and which meant that there was no revolutionary agenda. We would have struggled against neoliberal agenda, but simultaneously, we would have demanded that the ANC must fully implement the Freedom Charter, in particular its economic clause, which says mineral wealth, banks and monopoly industries must be transferred to the ownership of the people. We demanded that unless the land question was addressed back and be restored back to a democratic state so that it can be distributed, and we had an agenda that the state needed not just to distribute land, take over the land, redistribute it according who needs it. We were very clear that the state, in terms of the Freedom Charter, needed to basically distribute tractors, seeds, ensure that people have got access to irrigation schemes, and ensure that people can be able to deal with land hunger, to deal with poverty, and that was very important. But also that talks to the importance of the role of the state in the economy. We would have demanded that we don't need a state that is carrying a knobkiri. We needed a state that basically intervenes in the economy, a state that drives a revolutionary agenda. But fundamentally for that state, which is what has postponed our liberation, that state needed to take ownership and control of all commanding heights of the economy, all our country's minerals, and so that at the back of those minerals, it can champion beneficiation, it can build new sectors so that we can smash poverty, and so that we can undo unemployment, deal with questions of inequalities by making sure that we create the necessary jobs that can pay people a living wage.
Well, very critical of those neoliberal policies were the moment we decided to go to IMF, and then in 1983 economic recovery program was a neoliberal policy which was directed by the IMF and World Bank. You know, we saw that at that particular economic recovery program, workers were laid off, and then in the 1990s, the structural adjustment program, the same thing dictated by the IMF and the World Bank, actually led to the shrinking of the employment avenues for this country. There was massive redundancies, massive retrenchment, of labor. And unfortunately, in this part of the world, when you lose your job, then you are left to go and die. Whereas in the developed countries, in Europe and America, when you don't even have a job, they still pay you. So why would institutions like the Bretton Woods institutions come to impose such policies on us? So you can see that these are neoliberal policies that actually led to the sale of state-owned enterprises to the multinationals. You talk about all the breweries in this country are now in the hands of multinational companies. Accra Brewery, is it Kumasi Brewery or Guinness or whatever you call them? All of them are now in the hands of what? Multinationals. Today you can see that our telecommunication sector is totally dominated by foreign multinationals. It comes to our mining sector through these policies which have been reinforced. It led to all our major mining companies, institutions are in the hands of multinationals. So virtually almost everything is now in the hands of the multinationals. So these are the neoliberal policies that have seriously affected, the control of our economy, and then also degrading the quality and the decency of employment in this country. Casualization, contract employment, all those outsourcing are the consequences, of what the neoliberal policies that we've had in this country.
Moi, c'est Amadou Kwame Simplice, de Issue Passy, Union syndicale des paysans de Côte d'Ivoire. Je suis là pour représenter mon organisation cette organisation a pour but de lutter pour l'intérêt, de défendre l'intérêt et le droit des paysans de Côte d'Ivoire pour une meilleure vie. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, quand on parle de la Côte d'Ivoire est basée sur l'agriculture. Mais aujourd'hui, ceux qui pratiquent ce métier, nous voyons que ces personnes sont maltraitées et ils n'ont pas droit à la parole. Quand nous regardons cela, c'est vraiment décevant. Nous ne pouvons pas accepter ce genre de choses. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes en train de parler de la fête des travailleurs. Oui, des personnes ont lutté pour que cette fête-là puisse avoir lieu. Mais aujourd'hui, si je regarde, il fait un pas en arrière, en regardant dans l'autre visage, c'est-à-dire je vais parler de mon pays, la Côte d'Ivoire. Aujourd'hui, on parle de fête. Lorsque quelqu'un décide de fêter, c'est lorsqu'il est en liberté. Mais aujourd'hui, nous sommes toujours vraiment dans la main de l'oppresseur. Il pense que cette fête-là, c'est une fête de forme. Mais parce que puisque la lutte continue, c'est une fête de forme. Donc, sincèrement, les paysans, au niveau de, je vais vous donner quelques chiffres, au niveau de la Côte d'Ivoire en 2021, nous avons pu avoir 6200 tonnes de cacao. En 2022, nous avons pu avoir 6 400 000 tonnes de cacao. C'est seulement quand on parle de la Côte d'Ivoire, quand on essaie de voir ces genres de chiffres que le paysan apporte au gouvernement de Côte d'Ivoire, et ces personnes sont négligées parce qu'ils ne sont pas soignés. Aujourd'hui, dans les champs, ils sont piqués par des serpents, ils sont négligés. Il n'y a même pas de centre pour eux, pour qu'on puisse les traiter. Sincèrement, c'est vraiment décevant. Même pendant la rentrée, les parents ont du mal à scolariser les enfants. Et quand nous regardons cela, vraiment, ça ne va pas droit au cœur. Et aujourd'hui, notre équipe est là pour lutter pour cela, pour que nous puissions avoir une indépendance vraie, que le planteur même pourra vraiment s'exprimer, discuter du prix, du prix. En fonction de ça, il faudrait qu'il doit se prononcer sur son produit. Parce que si on prend la décision, et puis la personne qui pratique ce métier, il y a tout le temps au champ, vraiment, quand nous regardons cela, c'est vraiment décevant. Donc c'est seulement la fête des travailleurs, oui, ça existe, mais puisque la lutte continue, je pense que cette fête-là, c'est une fête de forme, mais le fond est encore là, puisqu'on continue de lutter. Donc, je vous dis merci.
And it's not only in Ghana, across Africa, especially after COVID and then Ukraine war. I'm sure IMF now has a lot of leverage because they go with small amount of money, and all what our governments do is to stop all what they're doing and do what IMF says they should do. And that's what they call the conditionalities. So they cut social spending, they cut all the spending that should go to poor people and so on. They say they have changed, but you see if they have changed. I don't think that the leopard can ever change their spots because they have a constitution they are running, and they can, do one or two things to get people to have a different impression. But truly, as Labour in Ghana, we don't think that IMF is the solution to our problems.
It's very painful in that the whole question of apartheid history in our country, which was anti-worker, which was union bashing, in the private sector today, our workers in various companies are still confronted with that. Our workers in Max Steel, our workers in Score Metal, our workers across various companies in the private sector are still confronted by this old bus-cap mentality attitude, where black people are still being seen as not complete human beings. They can be doing very well across all sectors of the economy to deliver quality production that is competitive, that is being exported all over the world. But they are not seen that they don't deserve to work in a democratized workplace. They don't deserve to basically, in terms of featuring in the demographics of the company, to form part of decision making. It is black and African workers who produce this quality production, but it is still white males who are, most of them, still very racist, who still believe in the old order, who have not decided to dump the old racist stereotypes. That's the struggle that our members in a new dispensation today must still continue to struggle against.
Bonjour chers camarades, je suis le camarade Pierre Vincent de la Côte d'Ivoire. Je suis du syndicat la Confédération Générale des Travailleurs de Côte d'Ivoire, CITARAI. En abrégé, CTCIRAI. Aujourd'hui, c'est la célébration de la fête du travail. Et cette fête-là représente pour nous quelque chose d'assez important. Pourquoi? Parce que quand on se rappelle l'historique même de cette fête, c'est une fête qui a été obtenue grâce à la lutte de certains travailleurs américains, pratiquement 200 000 travailleurs, qui ont lutté. Et cette lutte-là a été une lutte assez acharnée. Mais aujourd'hui, c'est à la sueur de leur front, c'est à la sueur de leur sang qu'on a pu obtenir cette lutte, cette victoire. Et aujourd'hui, cela représente quelque chose d'assez grand pour nous, parce que si ces personnes-là n'avaient pas lutté, aujourd'hui, on n'allait pas bénéficier des 8 heures de travail. Donc, nous disons que c'est quelque chose d'assez important. Au niveau de mon pays, c'est toujours des célébrations, c'est des revendications, c'est des doléances que les différents syndicats du pays vont porter au niveau gouvernemental. Et ensuite, le gouvernement va regarder ça de près pour que la situation des travailleurs de la classe ouvrière s'améliore dans le pays. Et nous savons qu'aujourd'hui, pratiquement tous les pays africains sont gouvernés par le capitalisme, ce qui freine un peu, je vais dire, la prospérité au niveau de la classe ouvrière. Et donc, ce combat-là, c'est un combat pour tous les syndicats, c'est un combat pour tous ceux qui luttent pour la liberté des travailleurs, des opprimés, de tous ceux qui sont exploités. Et cette lutte, aujourd'hui, nous savons qu'au niveau même de mon pays, la Côte d'Ivoire, c'est beaucoup de combats encore, parce qu'il y a des entreprises où, malheureusement, on parle de 8 heures de temps de travail. Mais ça, c'est dans la forme, mais dans le fond, malheureusement, il y a des entreprises encore qui travaillent un peu plus que ça, où les gens font 10 heures de travail, 12 heures de travail, voire 14 heures de travail. Et malheureusement, ces heures supplémentaires-là ne sont pas payées. Et donc, c'est tout ce combat-là que nous prenons à bras le corps pour que les choses s'améliorent, pour que, je veux dire, les conditions de travail et de vie des travailleurs puissent être beaucoup plus agréables. Et au-delà de ça, quelles sont les actions que nous menons par moment et les projets que nous avons? Aujourd'hui, au niveau de CTCIRA, nous avons pas mal de projets pour les travailleurs, c'est-à-dire que nous sommes actuellement sur un projet de construction de maisons pour ces travailleurs-là. Nous avons déjà obtenu des terrains, donc c'est la phase de voir comment est-ce qu'on peut faire pour que ces travailleurs-là puissent avoir un toit. C'est un projet qui nous tient à cœur. D'ici là, élargir aussi nos alliances, nos contacts, pour que le combat ne se porte pas seulement qu'à notre niveau, mais au niveau de tous les syndicats de Côte d'Ivoire, au niveau de tous les travailleurs, pour que la lutte puisse porter. Parce que quand nous avons la masse, il est bien évident que c'est un soutien énorme. Et en ce moment-là, les gouvernants, la classe bourgeoise va être regardant sur tout ce que nous voulons, et toutes nos priorités, tout ce que nous voulons pour le bien-être des travailleurs et de la population en général. Parce qu'il n'y a pas que les travailleurs, il y a aussi ces personnes qui font des métiers informels, qui font des petits boulots, qui ne sont pas forcément reconnus par le gouvernement, mais d'une façon ou d'une autre participent à l'éclosion, à l'épanouissement de l'entreprise, parce qu'ils constituent aussi, je veux dire, une économie assez importante pour le pays. Et donc, ce sont des personnes qu'il faut prendre en compte. Même les femmes du marché, c'est des femmes qui se battent nuit et jour pour pouvoir nous nourrir, nous les travailleurs, nous les fonctionnaires, nous les paysans, ces femmes-là se battent sous la pluie, sous le soleil, pour véritablement apporter de quoi manger dans les maisons. Et toute cette classe sociale-là, nous pensons qu'il faut les prendre en compte parce que c'est important. Nul ne doit rester au bas de la route, mais il faut que tout le monde puisse s'engager dans ce véritable combat afin que la chose puisse véritablement changer et que chacun puisse bénéficier des retombées, des richesses que tous les pays africains d'ailleurs regorgent, mais que les Africains ne bénéficient pas véritablement. Et c'est sur ce que je voulais vous m'arrêter. Dire merci à la chaîne de télé Pan-African TV qui aujourd'hui est venue prendre nos opinions, qui est venue nous donner la parole afin que nous puissions nous exprimer. Merci à vous.
Biggest problem is IMF. You see, government hasn't secured the IMF deal yet, but they are about to. And you see, the wind that is even blowing before they get it. The domestic debt exchange program is one of it, and that is terrible. You see, your government, and you get your citizens to work very hard, and then they say, oh, let us use part of our money to buy government bonds, so government has money to do development. And some, you have agreed with them that give me your money for 20 years. At the end of 20 years, I will give you this. Then suddenly, you come to say that all that is gone. The agreement you signed. What do you want them to take you for? People have lost confidence, and that is going to have serious repercussions for this country in many, many years to come. So for me, the biggest challenge is IMF. I think that, everybody says, TUC, what are you doing? TUC, we have made enough noise. We have said that IMF is not good for Ghana. No support from anywhere. People think that they should do things normally. But look, once the IMF thing is signed, and then we start seeing the effect, you see where we'll be. You see, water prices went up by 30-something% when we are already having very high cost of living. Water. Ghana cannot provide water for its people. And we are now increasing the cost of water that people drink, use to shower and so on. It means that this country is in serious trouble. Electricity prices have gone up. Fuel price, look at fuel prices. Our city has lost its value. And if you put all these things together and you assess the impact on individuals, workers, and so on, you find that workers in this country are really suffering. Not only workers, so even if you are lucky to have wage, it means that you can buy some food. But how about all these millions of people in the informal economy who are eking out life from nothing? It is a very serious situation. So our biggest problem has to do with IMF and the conditionalities that come with it. I think it's not going to help this country. Ghanaians must resist that. We have to, within the law, resist this and tell government that let's do it ourselves. That's the way forward, in my opinion.
Well, our most difficult challenge, which we need to unite and rally the working class once more, is the whole question of addressing this fundamental. How do we unlock the fact that there is no revolutionary agenda? Our country have no shortage of political parties. Our union have also formed one. In 2019, we launched a political party out of being desperate because we were clear that the working class is being sold. After 5 years under the leadership of the ANC, it continues to vote, it continues to be organized around the Freedom Charter and manifestos that get recycled. But in terms of pursuing a revolutionary agenda, which in our view must be concretized around the economic agenda, which must address these two fundamentals of ownership and control of the economy, so that we can be able, out of those minerals, champion manufacturing, industrialization, create the necessary jobs. The current political parties, all of them, I mean, there's a DA which defines itself in our country today as championing what it calls a moon pact. And when you look at it, it's a racist agenda. It has got nothing to do. But because the ANC didn't pass you a revolutionary agenda, and that it is bound, if you don't drive any revolutionary agenda, to pick on individuals and say and make them leaders. You can pick me tomorrow, and anyone you pick, without a revolutionary agenda that is being championed, which our people can hold you accountable for. All individuals are bound to sell out, are bound to be corrupt. And all revolutionary forces today are basically painted in a corner because there is chaos, everything is collapsing, infrastructure is collapsing, corruption is the order of the day, and therefore it makes perfect sense for right-wing political axis like DA of white monopoly capital to say we are standing here, we are not corrupt like the liberation forces, you must vote for us. And that's a fundamental question. The fundamental question and the fundamental challenge is, how do we put together a revolutionary agenda today? And how do we coalesce revolutionary forces behind that agenda? Is how do we contest state power? And clearly for that, for us, you need a revolutionary vanguard party. And even if you coalesce forces for election, the working class need its own revolutionary vanguard party that must raise levels of consciousness of the working class, not only to win elections, but to ensure that the working class, its levels of consciousness are raised, and that revolutionary vanguard party must learn from the working class, because the working class is the only class capable of carrying the revolution to its logical conclusion. Not because it is anointed by God, but because it is robbed broad daylight, its labor surplus value, and if you raise its levels of consciousness and you explain to it and make it understand that it must see itself as a class for itself to liberate itself, the working class can be consistent in pursuit of that class struggle as the only guarantee for change. Of course, you can't build socialism in one country. That's why NUMSA is part of the IPA. NUMSA is genuine about building and promoting worker to worker conduct, union to union conduct, to be part of building revolutionary forces all over the world, to obviously challenge imperialism, to say Cuba cannot be blockaded today, to say no to the 30% of the people of the world to be victims of the empire and its trade blockade. The people of Venezuela must be given their freedom. They must be allowed to have their own way of trading with the world without imperialism basically 24/7 blocking their trade, not allowing them to be part of building their own economy the way they wish. So we are in a struggle, and that struggle today, which is worsening the conditions of the working class, we must go all out to say the war between, which is basically couched as a war between Russia and Ukraine, when in fact it is a NATO war led by the United States. We must say that war in one voice all over the world, as progressive forces of the world. That war must end. It should have ended yesterday, because any war is fought with the hands of the working class. It is the blood of the working class that is being spilled.
Well, there have been many challenges to us. Look, today, unemployment is becoming a normality. You know, in economic development, unemployment should become the exception, but not the norm. Today, when you say you have no employment, it's normal not to have employment. You know, it's becoming a normality rather than an exception. You know, these are the challenges that are facing it. And once people do not have jobs to do, they cannot have purchasing power. And once they don't have purchasing power, they will not be able to buy the goods and services that are produced in their country. Unfortunately, we are not even interested, excuse me to say this, in encouraging and supporting local production. When I say this, one will say, why do you make such a very serious allegation? But you look at the counterproductive policies. Our trade policies are undermining every aspect of our production capacity. Until recently, that is in the 2023 budget, we had this discounted benchmark value, which virtually gave subsidy to imported items into this country. Because the effect of it was that the tax that you have to pay, you'll be allowed to keep about 50% of the tax that would have come to government. So whereas government was losing revenue, it also still allowed imports to be cheaper than the same products that are produced in the country. And we've all heard about Association of Ghana Industries complaints. We've also heard about what has happened to the poultry industry. It's virtually collapsed. Virtually, we don't have a poultry industry. And then we also learned about how we do not have maize and so on. Rice industry is under serious threat because of our trade policies, which we allowed free products or cheaper products into this country.
From the Trades Union Congress of Ghana, we say Ayuko to all workers. May Day is a day to pay tribute to workers for contributing to the economy and for being the engine of growth and development for the country. Historically, it has been proven that the unions have contributed to the liberation of the continent through its fight against colonization. However, we are being faced with a different form of colonization, which is neo-colonization. And so it is important for all workers of the world to unite now and fight against this new form of capitalism. Workers of the world, arise. Workers of the world, unite.
We have been in the trenches together with our comrades from Ghana, Zambia, and the rest of the continent. And I think that momentarily, just like there is no better cause like a cause of consistently championing the struggle of the working class, but at our doorstep, we must stop the war. This war between Russia and Ukraine, we must educate everybody. We must be calling for everybody who cares that the empire must wake up, the United States of America. This is a senseless war. It is people who get killed. And Russia is purely defending itself. And we must tell America and NATO to back off. There is no need to plunge the world to this very brutal war whose inflationary pressures affect both developed world and developing world. So it's important to state that. We obviously have a crisis in our country around the question of just transition. Strangely, we are facing a situation where what is supposed not to be a big issue, because we are not dinosaurs, we agree that we must move from fossil fuels to renewables. But strangely, South Africa, despite the fact that it is a developing country, it is allowed right from the earlier COPs that it should transition, there must be just transition. And suddenly we're waking up with the United States of America bribing South Africa with 8.5 billions to say we must not touch coal. As a result, what has been compromised in our country is maintenance of power stations And when I say maintenance, I mean quality maintenance of those power stations so that we can have 75% energy availability factor. And this has been undermined deliberately because people are prioritizing renewables. We're not saying renewables must not be prioritized, but we're saying we are a sovereign country. We have got a right to decide what energy mix does our country need to address the basic needs of our people. And that's one major campaign that we continue. We took government to court because they are rolling blackouts that are basically sabotaging the South African economy. And if you take into account that many people have no jobs in South Africa, they are unemployed, and inequalities, we are number one in the world, and suddenly you're just being plunged into rolling blackouts. It means if you are a family that used to support 5 to 6 extended families who do not have jobs, you're now facing a crisis where in fact you can't be at work, you're facing a short time layoff, and it's a crisis that we cannot be able to tolerate. And our immediate task and our immediate campaign is to stop this rolling blackout. We know how that can be done. We don't need the West to dictate to us how much we'll be able to run ESCOM. And it's a question of driving quality maintenance for us to be able to achieve that 75 energy availability factor. And we must refuse that our country's energy provision must be privatized. That's a campaign we're calling people of the world and comrades anywhere in any corner of the globe to support us in solidarity, because if we lose ESCOM and our energy provision get privatized, you know where capital get involved. It get involved for purposes of maximizing profit. Energy must remain decommodified. It must always be seen as a public good that must remain in the hands of the people, so that we continue to have a competitive electricity tariff, so that we can champion manufacturing, industrialization, and create the necessary jobs. But we should not do that as being foreigners in our own country. We must be part of owning and controlling the South African economy, because if we do that, if we're part of ownership, that changes power relations in society. We will destroy the most monster that Mandela went to prison for, which is racism. Both black and white, there will be genuine non-racialism. We will release energies. There will be no xenophobia, which continues to raise its ugly head, often to our brothers and sisters who supported us when we made that political breakthrough in 1994.
Workers of Africa, let's unite. Let us unite. Because there's something in unity that you can't get anywhere. I always tell my colleagues that the human heart is very soft. Perhaps the softest part of the body. But if you manage to put enough hearts together, like a mountain, even the bulldozers cannot crash it. So unity has something special that enemies cannot imagine what unity can do. So if there's any message I have for workers of Ghana, workers of Africa, workers of the world, let us unite, because we have nothing to lose but our chance.
We are on our own. We must stand together in solidarity. United we stand, divided we fall. An injury to one is an injury to all. But we can't just continue to march at the back of advices given by NGOs. We have been marching. It's about time that we must put together a revolutionary agenda in this continent. This continent is rich. It can feed all of us. We can smash poverty in this continent. We need to build together our own economies. First, we must take ownership and control of our minerals. We must beneficiate those minerals in our, we can be separated by rivers and forests. They are just fake. We can't be divided by rivers and forests in this continent. This is one Africa. We were not there in 1884, 1886 when they met in Berlin to divide this continent among themselves in their scramble for Africa. It's about time to basically say which continent is got what minerals. How do we drive manufacturing, industrialization, build our economies? And I'm not saying we must stop extracting and give them the minerals they want, but our agenda must be to ensure that Africa's future is in Africa. At the back of its minerals, we have got enough. There's no mineral in the world that is needed in the world that we do not have. We have got reserve. 90% of the reserve of platinum are here. We can build cars. Even in the transition from the first transition that I'm saying we must take control of is a transition from fossil fuels to renewables. It must be determined by our needs. We can't be dictated. I mean, very strangely, they say don't touch coal, and yet they take our coal. It has gone up about 700% of our coal is being flooding our ports leaving the country. Why? If you say let's not touch our coal, why do you demand it? We must keep our coal here and determine our pace. It must service our own economies. But also in the transition from combustion engine to electric vehicles, all those minerals are here in Africa. We should be saying we must have hub of building common auto industry, cars here, beneficiate, build component sector. All what I'm saying, as the working class of Sub-Sahara, the rest of the continent, the sooner we meet and continue to strategize about the revolutionary agenda, this Africa free trade, if we are not careful, it is going to still benefit those who oppress and colonize us, who drove imperialism. We need to meet and continue to meet quick to make sure that we continue to be on top of the agenda. Obviously, people will say this. We can go back to Nkrumah, we can go back to many of our comrades who have been killed for speaking the truth. But truth is truth. That's the beginning of wisdom.
For the continent, I just want to say that as individual workers, we are very weak. If we stand alone in our so-called territorial borders, Ghana workers stand alone, Nigerian workers stand alone, South African workers stand alone, Egyptian workers stand alone, Moroccan workers stand alone, we are not going to go anywhere. Capital within the continent is collaborating and having links and solidarizing. So the only way we can check and improve upon our working conditions is for workers of the region, that is the Africa, to unite, to unite and work together. The African Union has come up with this African Continental Free Trade Area. What is the essence of it? Its focus is to promote capitalism, is to promote free movement of capital around the continent. And we know that the consequences of that is the undermining of workers' rights. Workers' rights to employment, quality jobs, and then it creates low incomes and so on. If we do not unite as workers throughout the country, the continent, then we will suffer severely under these liberal arrangements, which are only seeking to, enhance the profit maximization capacity of capitalism, in the continent.
Bonjour camarades, je me nomme Maïsa Mahajara Fodé du Niger et je suis là au nom de l'organisation classe ouvrière anti-impérialisme du Niger. Donc, dans le seul anti-impérialisme conséquent consiste à lutter pour le réversement du capitalisme dont l'impérialisme est le stade suprême. Bon, au fait, l'histoire du 1er mai a été célébrée aux États-Unis au XVIIIe siècle et au moment où la précarité était totale. Dès lors, maintenant ça se passe un peu partout mondial, également chez nous. On arrive à la célébrer à travers les festins, les défilés et les revendications. Donc l'évolution, nous ne savons que depuis les soi-disant indépendance 1960, proclamation 18 mai, au fait l'Afrique et le Niger en particulier, nous sommes encore toujours sous l'oppression du colonialisme. Donc nous ne sommes pas totalement indépendants. Nos économies sont toujours restées confisquées par nos chefs. Ina yi makaranta Amir Kabaral godiya da ta kawo muna a garin Ghana, duka ta haɗa muna ƙasar ƙasar Afirka don duka gaba ɗaya, Niger, Benin, Togo, Senegal, Cape Verde, da zuwa dukan mu ƙasar Afirka wajen mutum 32. Ina yi musu godiya, kuma ina yi ma waya ta Pan-African da ta zo ta hidda mu duka ga hili don kowa da kowa ya san da mun zo a garin.
What I will say is that injustice in Ghana is injustice everywhere on the continent. And so if a worker is suffering in Ghana, that worker must be seen to be suffering everywhere on this continent. Similarly, in any part of the continent, whether in South Africa, whether in Nigeria, in Niger, in Senegal, our problems are one and the same. Our challenges are one and the same. And so that is the main reason why solidarity is important, and we must make sure we sustain solidarity. So working class solidarity must not die. We must keep it alive.
My name is Comrade Jeremiah Alikali from Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Nigeria. May Day is important because the whole world, workers in the world, including the African, are commemorating the victory and struggle that Africans embedded. It's the day that every worker is celebrating. And at the same time, and the May Day have its origin from the Hay Market in Chicago, USA, when the workers work more than the wages, work more than hours that's supposed to be. And the issues erupt, and the whole thing was that the victory came, and the workers in the world are celebrating. Then, in the same vein, Nigeria Labour Congress used the same solidarity hands to extend to the people of South Africa against the apartheid regime, when the whites, the minority whites, controlling the majority. And NLC were able to mitigate and work hard to make sure that South Africa apartheid did become a thing of past. At the same time, Nigeria have its issue concerning the policy that may not occur well against Nigerian workers. That the issue of SHAP, Structural Adjustment Program, which was implemented against the workers in Nigeria by former military dictatorship President Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, which was used by the IMF to pull down, to reduce the resources of Nigeria through devaluation of currency, through the reduction of Nigerian petroleum product, through the commercialization of Nigerian educational sector. Above this, there are so many effects that the policy had on workers in Nigeria. Number one, talking about the privatization of electricity tariff. The Nigerian workers went to the street all over Nigeria to protest against the policy of privatization. At the same time, they worked against the tariff, that the tariff will not go well for the workers. Then workers went away to protest against the government, and things were okay. But promising that the tariff will be enough, will be okay for every worker, but the reverse is taken. Then, in contrary to that, the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, deemed it fit that the working plan of NLC talk about the gender equalities. That is gender equalities. is that every workers in Nigeria to have a suitable, to have a quality workplace in Nigeria. As well, that the issue of casualization, the issue of outsourcing, the issue of anything called hard work day should not come to place. NSC play a very important role in the lack of workers in Nigeria. As well, talk about the issue of violence against women. NSC were able to fight against it. And at the same time, issue that relating to workers generally, the wages and the welfare of Nigerian workers was able to take by the Nigerian Labour Congress. For this, I conclude that Nigerian Labour Congress is there to protect the life of the workers. Is there to protect every worker that work individually, either the private sector or the government sector. NLC is there to protect the life of the workers, based that everyone works in equal rates.